They had a close loss against the Cardinals and 49ers to start the season. They played close against Buffalo. They played close against the Patriots. They played close against the Dolphins last week. Like, this is a team that, if things fall their way, maybe they have another 2 or 3 wins on their belt, and we're looking at a 5-8 team that's still definitely in rebuild. But they're a fun team. I think Tyler Shaw, he was a second round pick. I think, especially this year, working through some of his pains, like this team, if they can get a good second receiver along Chris Olave, if they can find Alvin Kamara's replacement, and then get an offensive line around him, then I think the Saints are genuinely going to be like a solid team next year. Maybe they don't win the division quite yet, but they're right on the cusp of it. I don't think they're that far off.
Yeah, and two, look at Philadelphia's offense without Kellen Moore. Huh, who would have thought? And, like, Kellen
Yeah.
Moore has kinda been a guy who's kinda gotten kicked around. He was with Dallas, and then Mike McCarthy was insecure, so he fired Kellen Moore, and then he went to the Chargers, and then I believe the Chargers had a pretty good year under Kellen Moore. He goes to Philadelphia, they win the Super Bowl, and now he's with the New Orleans Saints, and seems like this team has actually been competitive, and they just haven't gone away, which is kind of similar to what we saw with the Panthers last season, where the Panthers really start to pick it up in December and show some momentum going into the following year. So Saints are definitely on our watch for just that next team.
Yeah. Let's talk about some teams. So we talked about some upsets. Let's talk about some games that actually had playoff implications on the line, and a game that was probably the game of the week going into it, and it didn't, and it definitely delivered. Bills and Bengals. Bengals fall in this game, but 39-34. Joe Burrow returns 4 touchdowns. Josh Allen has 3 of his own, and it's just an offensive juggernaut. Fourth quarter, both teams putting up points, but I forget exactly how we bet this. I know I think you picked the Bengals, I picked the Bills, but monster game. Bills stay in that race for potentially the AFC East, but also in the playoff picture. Do you think with this loss, the Bengals are officially out of it, or is there still that chance that they crawl back?
I think they're out because the Steelers or the Ravens pretty much only need to win one more game to eliminate them, because if the Steelers win another one, I think they'll have the tiebreaker. So I do think that either Pittsburgh or Baltimore will still win the division. And now you've just dug yourself a hole that's just a little bit too deep. Where if you look at some of their losses, if you win that Jets game earlier in the year, if you win that Jacks, the Steelers, and the Ravens on Sunday, and we can talk about that next. But it's just really disappointing because the Bengals are playing really good all game. They look unstoppable. And then Joe Burrow has two of the dumbest interceptions that I've ever seen. Like the first one, he just pops the ball in the air, gets a pick six, and then he gets another one where it's just batted in the air by the defensive line, and then it's another interception. And that was a game that you're in control of the entire time. We saw one of the best catches all year with T. Higgins with that one-handed catch in the end zone. Jamar Chase was going off. Chase Brown was going off. Samaje Perine was starting to come alive. We had some huge plays from Mike Gesicki with his hands looking sure as ever in this one. And then you just have two really dumb plays back to back where you can live with one of them. But the fact that you had two turnovers, it's just devastating. And then on the flip side for the Bills, that was two of the dumbest plays I've ever seen Joe Burrow make. And you almost lost that game to Cincinnati at home in a blizzard in Buffalo. Like, this was another game where you have a fumble through the end zone. It just like, this is like one of those wins that's like, this doesn't give me a lot of confidence in Buffalo at all, especially coming out of it.
Well, my biggest thing I look at for the Bills is like, this is like, if we look at all of their wins, right? It has to be them. Their win against the Ravens, 40, the Jets, 30, the Dolphins, 30, the Saints, 30. Like, the only time they win these games are if they can put up at least 30 points. And every time that they don't put up 30 points, i.e., the Texans game, the Dolphins game, the Falcons game, the Patriots game, they lose because their defense is the biggest problem. Their defense can't stop anybody. And especially when they go and face the Patriots this weekend, can they stop Drake May in that offense? Can they stop the Eagles a few weeks from now? I know they have the Browns and Jets as well, which should be an easier task, but this Bills team, I can't trust their defense. And then at the end of the day, this team is still also resulting with turnovers. Josh Allen was the clean game, but we had 2 fumbles from James Cook, and these are all costly moments too. Like you mentioned with that goal line fumble. Like the Bills are still that team that we worry about making the wrong play in a key moment, just like what we've seen them against the Chiefs the last 5 years. Like I can't trust the Bills because they still don't seem like a team that I can trust moving forward, especially with how they played in this game. Their defense sucks, and then in the moments that matter, they fumble.
Yeah, and then also, if a coach and quarterback go their first 5 years together without winning a Super Bowl, they don't.
Yeah. They don't.
They
And
don't.
that's why I think we can be both of these teams I think are gonna fire their head coach. Zach Taylor, I think they should definitely fire, especially because like I look at the Bengals, right? That I see on these wins, right? We have a game against the Jets, which they had the last minute, they couldn't stop them. The Bears game, inexcusable. They
Oh,
had they had a lead with 47 seconds. Huge game from Colston Loveland there. And then they played a close game against the Patriots. I know the Patriots are at the top of their class right now, but they have at least 2 wins on their schedule, which makes them go from 4-9 to potentially 6-7, which is still right in the mix. These 2 games we're going to look back on. This Bills game we're going to look back on and say, "Damn, if they just went the other way, this team wins their division." And it's been like that how many years since the Super Bowl now at this point? How many times are they going to start slow, get hot at the end of it, and just barely miss out on the playoffs before we're like, "Wait a minute. Maybe it's Zach Taylor's fault. Maybe we need to try something new." But I think this is the last year with Zach Taylor.
yeah, and it's like, really? We're gonna blame Lou Anarumo? He's the problem. The guy who
Hasn't been
came up with the defensive strategy to not only stop the Chiefs, but that was when the Chiefs were at the peak of their powers with Travis Kelce in his prime and Tyreek Hill, when Tyreek
Yeah,
Hill was the most dynamic possible, and he stopped that offense, but he's the problem? Like, really? Okay.
hasn't been a problem in Indy. I'll tell you what, Indy doesn't mind having him as a DC. They played great for them. So Bengals, they're probably dead. Sadly, Bills do win. They still are in the hunt. They're probably gonna get that wild card spot. But speaking of the AFC North, let's talk about whatever this game was, which was the Steelers and Ravens game. A game where I feel like both teams were trying to lose. It felt like Steelers still squeak out the win. They're probably going to win that division at this point, but good lord. Ultimately, I thought it was going to be a lower scoring game. I thought this was going to be like a classic 16-13 game, but Lamar starting to get his rhythm back a little bit, but ultimately Steelers prevail. What did you think about this AFC North bout?
So the Steelers had 31 rushing yards in this game and won, which is their fewest rushing yards in a victory since 1989. So there's that. I get we had a electric screen to, Warren, and he was able to break off a huge play, but like for the Steelers, it's just too inconsistent. And then this was the first time since October or early Nov yeah, it's the first time since October that they had a 20 plus yard pass downfield. So Aaron Rodgers has a couple deep balls to DK Metcalf in this game, but like this is just one of those games where the Steelers showed you every reason why you should be frustrated with them because somewhere in there is a good team. It's just Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith just seem like they're from a different time. And then you also have John Harbaugh, who also seems like he's kind of an outdated head coach at this point. But for the Ravens, this is a massive fumble because not only do you lose to the Cincinnati Bengals, but now you lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers in back to back weeks in division. And Lamar Jackson seems like he's still dealing with injuries. He doesn't seem like he's quite right yet. Derrick Henry had a pretty solid game for you where he has a couple touchdowns, and then your defense still isn't right. So this just is going to be where whoever wins this division and plays the Buffalo Bills in the first round is probably going to get destroyed. And that's probably going to be the first round bye that happens again for Buffalo. So we're going to have Sean McDermott against Mike Tomlin or Baltimore. And it's just disappointing seeing Baltimore win this game because now it's definitely looking like we're going to have Pittsburgh be the team that wins the AFC North, and they just don't look dynamic, and it's just disappointing. And the Rays drive all the way down the field, and they get stopped on fourth down by Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh's defense, they haven't looked impressive all year long.
No. This is the sad part about the Steelers is like they're still going to be that 9-8 team. They're still going to make the playoffs. Their schedule is fairly easy. They got the Dolphins and Browns on their schedule. They face the Ravens at the end of the season. which is probably going to be for the division ultimately. But like, I'm just not impressed with what I've seen from them. Their defense has been poor. Aaron Rodgers, he's been solid, but I definitely don't think it's the Aaron Rodgers that we know and love. The worst part about this, though, is that they're still going to have that winning record. And despite the fact that they've been one or fewer games above 500 in those 20 years of winning seasons, it's just that same headline is going to go into next season.